Hi, I'm Britt,
And my name is Alyssa.
and this is SkeleTales.
And this is the podcast where we strive to answer the age-old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
Alyssa, do you think that is an answer we could get if we were hypnotized?
I don't know. It might be. Hey, Lara, what do you think?
Hey guys, yeah, I think maybe you could have a visit with your grandma in hypnosis and finally talk about all of those things she's been haunting you for all of these episodes and finally get some resolution so that you can feel like her love and support instead of feeling like she's just, basically torturing you all the time.
She does.
Lara would know because this is Lara Lenore. She's a hypnotist, photographer, improviser, and the host of a new podcast called Good Enough and Getting Better. So welcome, Lara.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here. I love your show.
Yay. So Lara and I actually did improv together. We were in a little improv troupe. What was the name of our group or our show?
Oh, the Dim Light Zone, Twilight Zone themed episodes. It was so fun. Yeah.
It was so fun. All our research was watching like the old Twilight Zones and just being weird and spooky haunted things. So this is sort of like running deep with me.
You definitely had some of the best weird spooky ideas. Like I never knew where things were going to go with you in the show. It was great.
Well, thank you so much. I remember being very nervous for the show, but I think we killed it. I don't remember. I think I blacked out. I don't remember a single thing we even did.
Me neither, but I'm also sure we killed it.
So hypnotism, when we were doing the show together, you were doing photography, but at some point you transitioned into hypnosis. So what brought you there? What made you investigate the science of hypnosis?
Well, connecting it back to photography, I was doing a job doing post-production work, which was kind of boring. And so I was listening to all kinds of audio, books and podcasts and that sort of thing, like pretty much full time as part of my job. And so that's where I first encountered the teachers that I studied from that got me started on this journey. Essentially, it was something that just was fascinating and I was curious about it and I just kept wanting to learn more. And then starting to learn these principles and use them in my own life and then use them with my friends. It just becomes this thing that's pretty addictive. It's really fun and exciting. And it's made such a dramatic difference in my own life now that the ability to share this with other people is really fulfilling and wonderful.
How do you become a hypnotist?
You learn how. It's, in my case, I knew that I was about to move to Portland, Oregon, where I live now, and the state doesn't have any real licensing requirements around hypnosis. So I took the opportunity to actually travel to Toronto to study with some of the top folks in my field, the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy there. And then it's kind of a intimate field and that a lot of the top trainers know each other and you have access to a lot of those things. Like you can go to a conference and meet all the, top people in the field. And so I've just done a lot of courses in different areas of it and brought it all together. And I've been doing it now professionally for 5 years. And so learned a lot over the process of actually working with people. And it's like the best job because, every day is different. Every person is different. The way people think is all different. And you get to sort of dig into like how and where their patterns come from and just figure out how to get those things to work better for that person's life. It's really exciting.
Had you been hypnotized before you became a hypnotist? Like, had you you heard about it, you were listening to these post-productions,
right? And
then did you say, hey, I want to go try hypnosis? Like, I want to go get hypnotized?
Actually, my first experience of it was in class, in hypnosis class. But we basically would like hypnotize each other multiple times every single day because we're practicing all of these techniques and working together on that. So that week was a very deeply transformative event in and of itself, just going in and out of hypnosis. And, we give each other little suggestions for things while we're practicing just to make the most of our time. And
Oh, that's so interesting. So you just dove in feet first. You're like, I'm doing this.
Yeah, right. It just felt like I needed to. I don't know. It's like a calling almost.
So I have this, I've never been hypnotized that I'm aware of. I have got a lot of questions. Alyssa too, I know. When you are hypnotizing someone, it's a little cliche, but do you genuinely say, you are getting very sleepy? Like, is that part of the process?
No. Well, I don't say that. That was something that they genuinely did say, like in the 50s. And just a brief history, the style that people used of hypnosis back then was very directive, where they would tell you what you were experiencing. You are getting very sleepy. Your eyes are closing now. That sort of thing. And, the culture was, they had a really different relationship with authority at the time. So that would work for people in a way that it doesn't really work for people now. So if you think about this, right? So if I were to tell you, you're getting really sleepy, you might notice your own response to that statement is to be like, no, I'm not. Why are you telling me what to do?
right?
Don't tell me what to do. Yeah.
Versus if I said something like, you may begin to notice a feeling of heaviness in your eyes. And as you notice this heaviness now, you can begin to allow your eyes to close whenever you are ready to close them completely and relax now. You know, something
that's
like
much
that.
better.
It's much more permissive. It's sort of maternal instead of a paternal style.
Are you trying to hypnotize us? Is it? What's this is? We didn't agree to this, Lara.
Sorry, you're right.
She's taken over the podcast. I am now the podcast.
My eyes
host.
have turned to little spirals.
Right.
Well, actually, on that same note, can you like secretly hypnotize someone? Can you kind of like force it? Like, can you hypnotize someone without them realizing that you're hypnotizing them?
So this is kind of a tricky question because it requires defining hypnosis, and that is surprisingly hard to do because the deeper you get into learning what it is, the more it just seems like everything in life is hypnosis. So rather than try to unpack that here, I'm just going to limit your question to the formal process of hypnosis where I would induce a trance, we would do suggestions and or processes to create a change and then bring you out of trance. And that is definitely a cooperative process. So if you were not on board with what I was doing and not working with me to do it, it wouldn't work because essentially you're actually the one doing all the work. I'm telling you what to think and what to imagine, and you can certainly decide not to do those things. Obviously, if you have paid me and showed up in my office, you're probably not going to decide not to do it, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, there are a lot of techniques that utilize our sort of unconscious thinking shortcuts that we use that manipulate people. And those things are basically entirely present in every form of advertising. So in the sense, like if you're asking, can I be unconsciously manipulated? The answer is yes, all the time. As a hypnotist, knowing these principles of influence, knowing these things that they tend to use to affect people's choices, I spot these techniques all the time. I'm usually pretty good at not being influenced by them, but even I fall for it occasionally and just notice like, oh, that was a very effective strategy.
Can you give an example?
So just like, for example, there's something called a double bind where instead of offering you the infinite number of choices that are available in life, they'll basically say, hey, you can choose this one or you can choose this one, where choosing neither of them is an option, but they don't list it. So our brains sort of shortcut between choosing between two things. You'll see that all the time. You'll see appealing to our sense of authority. We tend to find certain authority figures will shortcut our rational thinking process. So if they put an actor in a doctor's coat in a commercial and that doctor says, we recommend this thing, then we're more likely to accept that that thing is good for us. You'll see this stuff everywhere. There's a lot of different ways this kind of stuff works. You've
been doing this for 5 years now, which is pretty substantial. Yeah. Have you ever come across a patient that could not be hypnotized?
Well, I call them clients, not patients, because I'm a non-licensed professional. But basically, everyone can be hypnotized. So back to the question about what is hypnosis. Essentially, when you're going into hypnosis, it's a slower brainwave state where it's similar to meditation. It's similar to you actually go through slower brainwave states as you fall asleep at night and when you're waking up in the morning. It's pretty much impossible to watch TV for more than 30 seconds without going into a trance state. So everyone is going in and out of trance states all the time. The only difference with the hypnosis session is how you're doing it and what you're using it for. It's more intentional, obviously, than those other examples. So everyone can do it. It's just a matter of, people have different methods that might work better for one person than another. So there are studies, mostly outdated ones, that state a certain percentage of people can't be hypnotized. And because studies have to treat every single participant the same way, that's basically just saying those participants weren't able to be hypnotized by the one recording they chose to use for that study. But if you have a variety of different tools and ways and you're being directed by somebody who's calibrating your response in the moment, we can all get there.
Have you had that tricky client, though, where it's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's just keep talking. Let's just keep going, where it does just take quite a bit longer to get there?
That's pretty rare. Yeah. I'm actually trying to think of an example, and I think it's more a matter of feeling like you're comfortable letting your guard down enough to go there rather than actually not being able to go there. But even for those folks, there's a lot of tools that we can use consciously, like conversationally, that still access the way that we are processing information unconsciously. I use a lot of neurolinguistic programming, which is a set of tools. We were talking before we hit record about the way that we think, whether it's in pictures or hearing yourself talk or through feelings. So examining and working with those aspects of the way that we're thinking is something that we can just do in a conversation, but it's still actually a very unconscious process. So even if we can't do a formal trance process together, there's a lot of ways to get at your unconscious, sort of coding, if you will, hack your code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, I want to fall asleep, but I can't lock in, your brain just keeps going, I can't get into that state. So I feel like if I were to try hypnosis, I think that's my fear, that I would want to, but I'm overthinking it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking too much to let it happen.
Well, you mentioned that you're a very visual person. And so probably the easiest way for you to get into a trance state is actually to switch into your kinesthetic system. So to focus more on actually what you're feeling in your body. Feelings are a much slower way of thinking, as we discussed earlier. Typically people who are very visual and quick thinkers who have trouble sleeping, what you're doing in your mind in that moment while you're trying to sleep is you're actually running this visual slideshow or movie in your head of all of the things that you have to do or that happened that day. And you're sort of narrating at the same time, this combination of quick auditory and visual information that keeps your nervous system activated. But if you're able to actually recognize that you're doing that and then slowly cycle through your senses, paying attention to what you're feeling in your body in that moment, making slower pictures, slower sounds, or even just one at a time, then you can actually teach your body to fall asleep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
What kind of things do people come to you for hypnosis for?
I work a lot with emotional patterns. So if you are feeling a lot of fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, those sorts of things, they are often, even anger, there's often this sense by the time people are coming to me, they feel like this thing is out of their control. They've tried to change it and it's hasn't worked so far. And so a lot of times there can be an unconscious root to these things.
I met somebody who was doing hypnosis to quit smoking.
Yeah.
Can it be done for deep-seated habits like that, or alcoholism, or big kind of ingrained things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I have worked with habits a bit. It's not my favorite way of working, so I don't necessarily advertise a lot of that. But something like drinking, for example, there's usually going to be an emotional pattern behind that, right? So if we looked at the moments when you're drinking, what makes you feel like you need to have a drink, there's usually some sort of anxiety or insecurity or emotional patterns there that once you address those patterns, typically when you're working at that level, then that person can actually create a healthy relationship with alcohol where they can take it and leave it rather than feeling like they just have to never touch a drink again, which is really sets a person up to want that thing, right? Because if you tell someone you can never have this again,
that's all you
want. What
want.
does that make us want to do?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
What Britt just mentioned about people wanting to quit smoking, that's a lot of what I think I've heard about modern hypnosis. You're going to like break a habit. For instance, Odin, my son, my 12-year-old, he wanted me to ask you if you can make vegetables taste like cotton candy. If he came to see you.
I love that question, Odin. Thank you. The answer is I'm not sure. Maybe for you, we could take it that far. Everyone's a little bit different. I actually have a teacher who intentionally installs synesthesia in people so that they can experience the visuals associated with music. Apparently, it's very fun to do that. So the limitations to our senses are maybe a little bit further out than you realize. But I have never had a client request that specifically, but I have helped a lot of people change. There's foods that they don't like and they want to be able to like them more, or there's things that they like that they want to like a little bit less. So we can certainly play with that. Do you want to play with that right now? Do you have something that you like that you want to not like, or vice versa? One of you?
You
don't have to.
Well, okay, wait. I got very intrigued.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm put on the spot now.
I got very intrigued by this whole applied synesthesia for music. I don't know if you said you're your teacher, but can that help you make like perfect pitch? Because like I want an E to sound green, I want a C to sound blue. Like are you able to do that so you can identify that, or is it just more a beautiful mixture of colors when you hear music?
That's a great question. I don't know. It's entirely possible that is possible. Hypnosis is one of those things where we don't entirely know where the limits are. And I always suggest that if you want to try something, you can always find out if it's possible or not.
I am like, my brain is still reeling about something that I either want more or want less of. What do you have anything, Alyssa?
Wait, why would I want to like something less? Because I do it too much, right? Okay.
Well,
it's typically weight loss clients who request that there's a certain
like
food or
French
craving
fries
that they want to eat less of.
I love the French fries, but I don't want to hate a French fry, so I'm not going to have you do that.
Yeah, there's something that I don't like that I want to like.
I wouldn't mind liking Brussels sprouts or what's something that
Brussels sprouts.
You love them?
Love
they have
them.
to be cooked the right way. Oh, I think I've just been traumatized by like too many boiled Brussels sprouts.
Okay, so that's a perfect one. Okay. So Britt, I want you to think about Brussels sprouts, and I want you just to starting off, just so we can tell if you're moving the needle, I want you to just evaluate for yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you currently like Brussels sprouts, or how much, if you could picture a plate of Brussels sprouts sitting in front of you, how likely would you be to want to eat them?
I'm going to say like 4.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you think about Brussels sprouts, what are you seeing, hearing, feeling in that moment? What's going on inside your mind? What are you picturing?
Looking at a plate of raw Brussels sprouts, and I have to prepare them. And it does not feel enjoyable in the slightest.
Okay, so it's a picture in your mind of raw
taste bad.
Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
You're telling yourself in your internal voice they're going to taste bad. And you have a feeling also that feels bad, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the picture, is it like dull or bright? Is it colorful?
It's pretty bright. They're pretty bright green Brussels sprouts. Yeah.
Okay. And the feeling that you're having in your body, what is that feeling like?
Dread.
It's a dread feeling. Where does that dread feeling, where do you feel it?
Yeah, my gut, I think.
Okay. It's in your gut.
Yeah.
Okay. So to contrast that, we're going to put Brussels sprouts aside for a second. What's a food that you really enjoy? French fries, you just mentioned, actually.
Yeah.
When you think about French fries and you picture those, imagine those. What do you see, hear, or feel when you imagine French fries?
Oh, a warm, fresh fried French fry with like salt on top.
So there's more of a like temperature component to it. Like whereas the Brussels sprouts were just raw, right? They were cold, but the French fries are like warm. Okay. What else?
Can I imagine eating a French fry now?
Yeah. So when you're in your visual,
warm,
then they're
like soft but a little crisp on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the texture of it in your mouth as well.
I really want a French fry right now.
And then what's the feeling you have in your body when you're thinking about that French fry?
Pleasant.
Where do you feel that pleasant feeling?
Actually, I feel it higher up, like in my heart, like it's enjoyable.
Nice.
Okay.
This feeling higher up in your heart, like it's enjoyable. Is it like a warm, soft feeling?
Yeah.
What color is it?
Oh.
It's an unconscious question. So whatever popped into your mind first is the right answer.
A red? I actually don't know. Yeah. I'm not like Alyssa with the colors. She's good with them.
They were yellow. I'll just tell you.
It was yellow. Okay, it was yellow.
There's no wrong answer. Britt gets to make up her own internal representations, Alyssa. So this warm, soft red feeling in your heart from the French fries. Mm-hmm. So we're going to carry that feeling forward. And now I want you to see the Brussels sprouts again. Mm-hmm. And I want you now to picture them being warm and salted. And there's texture to them. They're not just raw. You're picturing them having more similar qualities to the French fries. And then you're also going to bring that red, warm, soft feeling into that place where that other feeling used to be in your gut. And so feel that warm, soft feeling while you're seeing these Brussels sprouts.
Okay. I'm seeing a cooked Brussels sprout now. And it's cooked, like a little crispy fried, where it's like a little got that crisp on the outside and it's salted. Yeah.
Okay. So now, a moment ago, you had a 4 was your likelihood of wanting to eat those Brussels sprouts. Check in now when you think about Brussels sprouts. How does it feel?
Oh, I'm thinking like an 8.5 now.
Cool. So you just doubled it in like 2 seconds, right?
That's brilliant, Lara.
Yeah. So you can try that on Odin with his candy vegetables if you want.
I will. Brussels sprouts are one he will eat, but no, that's like so many. Zucchini, he's like, I can't digest it. I'm like, you can, but I will. I was gonna say, if you're picturing raw Brussels sprouts, like that's definitely not where you need to start.
Yeah, but how often do you stop and think about how you're imagining things in that moment? Right?
You're just like, gross. You stop there. You're like, gross. I don't want it.
No more.
And then you don't try harder. Yeah. But a roasted, you got to like a nice roasted Brussels sprout, which is like the best. Yes.
We all have a default way that we represent things when we think about it in our mind. If you think about your favorite person, you probably picture them in a really pleasant way, smiling, happy. You think about somebody that you don't like, you're probably seeing them like maybe with a mean face.
It's so true.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Was I just hypnotized? That was not more visualization, right?
Yeah.
When you see clients, do you only see them in person, or is this something that you can do over Zoom too?
You can do it over Zoom. Yeah, all through COVID, that was my primary way of seeing people. And now that everybody actually knows how to use Zoom, that's very helpful.
Yes.
The only caveat to that is I would say earlier I referred to people sensing the world more visually versus kinesthetically, or maybe that was before we hit record on that conversation. But basically people...
I think you touched on it.
Yeah, people who are very feeling based tend to struggle a little bit more with using Zoom. If you're that kind of person, that you probably know it though, because you're probably having trouble connecting with people in Zoom meetings outside of hypnosis, and you know that you connect with people better in person. So someone like that is going to know that they need an in-person session. But if you're able to have a conversation with somebody, feel connected with people over Zoom, then it should be just fine.
Okay.
How often do you use a pocket watch?
Never.
Oh.
That belongs
Not
in the
even
50s
one?
also. I actually own one. If you want me to use it, I can try it out on you. But eye fixation is one way to create trance. It certainly works. It's not the only way or even necessarily the best way.
Ooh, what are some ways to create the trance? I'm envisioning that like spinning wheel that has the spiral, and it's like look into the wheel.
That would also be a form of visual fixation, eye fixation. I primarily use internal perception. So you're going to go inside and notice a certain sensation, and then we're going to use that internal awareness. Hypnosis is essentially a state of internal focus. So we can internally focus on anything. We can start with a feeling and then shift that into an awareness of the state. That's the issue that we want to work on, and then follow that back to where it came from, and then bring our perspective into that moment. And then that actually allows us to change the way that we're neurologically wired around that problem. So it's subtle it's not as dramatic as swinging a pocket watch or
Can you just do that for funsies if someone wants that, though, just for the expectation?
Yeah, if somebody expected a pocket watch to be the thing that works for them, then it would be the thing that works for them because expectation is part of the process.
Like some trance glasses, the ones that like swirl around.
I don't have any of those, surprisingly.
Oh, write it down. Gift for Lara.
Yeah. I use them every time. I'll be taken very seriously as a professional.
Come in, you.
Yeah. I just walk around the office with those on.
Okay, now we're getting ready. Well, and almost what I'm hearing, though, is like a hypnosis is a lot like guided meditation.
Very similar, yeah.
And then also like EMDR.
Yeah, so there's some interesting correlations there. So EMDR is basically a way of de-traumatizing memories by using eye accessing patterns, by basically having your eyes move laterally while you're basically accessing unconscious material. And the folks at the Human Givens Project have a theory that both hypnosis and EMDR both work by accessing your REM processing state. So you know how we go into REM states when we're sleeping, that's when we dream. And that is a way that we help to process the things that have happened in our day, process emotions, situations, things that have happened. And so there is some possibility that both of those things are rooted in that same state. But I find that there's a lot of good ways to de-traumatize unconscious material without necessarily having to move your eyeballs back and forth too. So I feel like hypnosis is probably a more flexible tool for that. But I do know people who've had great experiences with EMDR.
It's like
cool
eye movement desensitization protocol?
I don't remember.
Something like that. So we were talking about props and the eye hypno glasses and whatnot.
Oh, right.
When I was in college, there was a performance hypnosis on like we went. It was like he got in. He made like some girl walk around like she was a chicken, and just all this like bizarre things, and then afterwards they don't remember a thing. They don't remember doing that. And I've always wondered, like, was that a plant? Was that real? Does that really happen? Or you see these movie plots or TV show plots where someone gets hypnotized and then the hypnotist dies and then they're stuck as a dinosaur.
Like Office Space, where
yes. Oh yeah, that's the whole plot
so
of that.
stage hypnosis is real. It works a little bit different than hypnosis in this context that I use it. Basically, you've set this context for the experience by people knowing in advance that it's going to be entertainment, and they know what kind of entertainment it is. They know that it's going to involve getting up on stage and sort of doing things that you might otherwise feel too inhibited to do. And the stage hypnotist is asking for volunteers. So under those circumstances where you volunteer, knowing what you're doing, with the context of this being entertainment, people are able to allow themselves to go to this place where they can do these things. It is real. The hypnotist is generally being very selective about who they're taking as volunteers. So unlike the kind of hypnosis that I use in the office, which everybody can do it, the stage hypnotist is looking for the most externally demonstrative people, which is a much smaller percentage of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not the shy, timid one that someone's making them put up their hand next to them.
Right. Well, I mean, there could be shy, timid people who are really great trance subjects who just have been waiting for this moment to have the context to let their guard down and really let themselves like loose. I think that's why people drink too, isn't it?
True, right?
Being shy doesn't necessarily make you a bad hypnosis subject.
My brother did stand-up comedy for a short time, and at the club he worked at, there was a hypnotist, and he swore by it that it worked, and he's an extrovert, obviously, if he's going to do stand-up, but he would make him do the most insane things, and I was like, really, you don't remember doing any of that? And he was like, not a thing.
So what happens if the hypnotist dies? Well, on stage, do you get stuck that way?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're like I said earlier, it's a natural, normal state that we go in and out of all the time. So could you get stuck asleep and never wake up?
I don't know. Could you?
I mean,
Comas happen.
okay, that's a big difference. But basically, no, you're going to be able to come out of it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So when you get your clients into these trance states, when they wake up, do they remember the things that you've talked about? Or is it similar to the performance one or the stage one where you come out of it and you're like, what just happened? Why is my shirt off and I'm laying in a fetal position? What's going on?
For the record, that's never happened in a session. Okay. No.
I was talking more like on the stage side of things.
Yeah, so you have to specifically suggest amnesia if you want amnesia for the most part. Okay. Most of my clients remember most of their sessions, not necessarily 100%, because it's like whenever you're in that trance state, it's a little bit harder to remember, like when you're trying to remember a dream first thing in the morning, it's a little bit similar to that sometimes. But occasionally somebody will go really deep and then not remember a whole lot. Or occasionally there are people who there's an aspect of the work that we're doing where the conscious mind is a little bit more of an analytical, trying to pick things apart. And I feel like the unconscious mind actually sometimes uses this anesthesia to protect the work that we've done from the sort of analytical mind of the conscious mind from picking it apart. So sometimes it happens as a more protective thing, but most people remember what we do.
Speaking of clients and their wishes and things they come to you for, have you been asked to help somebody with like past life work?
I don't actually specifically take clients for that because I've never trained for that specifically. Okay. But it does occasionally happen spontaneously. I have had it happen in a session where I think it was a procrastination thing, actually, like you were talking about earlier, Alyssa, where we were going back to the root of the feeling that she was having around getting these things done. And it was interesting because the first memory we went back to, she was a little kid in this life, I think around 4 years old. And then, I'll always ask, like, is this feeling brand new or is it familiar? Have you felt it before? And if it's familiar, that means we need to go back even further. So we did that, and she landed in an execution scene from a previous life, this is very unusual. It wasn't as traumatic as it sounds because she immediately went into this place where like the execution was over and she was like, everything's okay, everything's fine, I can be at peace now. So it was like her way of letting it go. But
it was her execution of that happened. Oh my gosh, that's wild.
But it cleared her problem up. And so I don't know how those two things were connected, but her unconscious mind knew that they were. And so that's how that went. But typically I would say if we're regressing to prior to birth, the other thing that's kind of weird that happens more commonly than spontaneous past life regressions is people experiencing things from before they were born. So like when they were in utero.
Wow.
Like I had a client once with a fear of deep water, and she just never understood where this came from. And there was this feeling of fear that actually came from her mother when she's in this sort of like dark, watery place, like in the womb. And that was what created that fear for her. And as soon as we got to that memory, she was able to change it so that she has no problems with deep water now. But you'd never know consciously where that came from without following back through trance. I've also had something cool happen in terms of like, I don't know if you'd call this a future life progression, but like I've had a client see something from the future. This person was an artist, and we were working on a public speaking fear. And so she'd be in these situations where she would be up in public talking about her artwork. And so we did this future pace where she's going into this future scene where she's comfortably presenting, feeling great, all this stuff. And so I'm moving her forward through this process. And she's like, no, wait, just a second. I need to look at my paintings from the future. And she spent probably a good 5 minutes looking at this like artwork that she hadn't made yet, which that's fascinating to me. I want to know if she's painted any of those things by now.
Oh, that is interesting.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Does the girl who got executed know why she was executed? I like want some dirt on her past life. Can we call her back in for a free sesh?
I didn't get an answer to that at the time. I will say if you're interested in past life sessions, they do generally take you through a lot more of the details not only of why, but like what that experience has to do with your current life and sort of what you learned from that. And some people even do what they call life between lives hypnosis, where they, go into this place where they are deciding, like, I learned this from this life and I need to learn something different from this next life. And what kind of life should I go into next in order to do this? There's a sort of like planning process that they explore.
That's fascinating. That's very interesting.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So I know personally, when we chatted before, you told me that you will want to move into more hypnosis for healing, right? Because of a personal experience that you've undergone over the past few months.
Yeah. Well, I have had a number of fascinating experiences with physical changes with clients prior to this. Like, I had a client who we were working on an issue that was unrelated to physical health, where she reported that an issue that she was having with her eyesight had gone away while we were working together. And the issue that we were working on was something that was related to like her perspective and how she was seeing things. And so it can be this like really interesting correlation between our mental and physical, our mind-body connection. I had another client once who had a lump, a sort of growth in her thyroid area. It was not cancer, but it was uncomfortable and she could feel it. And she found out from her unconscious mind, basically, that lump was there because there was this problem in her relationship that she wasn't speaking up about, and that she needed to speak up about that before her body would make this thing go away. It was kind of like, what you need to do, just do it. Yeah. And she actually did say what she needed to say, and it actually shrunk after that. So that was really cool.
Oh, that's wild.
So I went through my own experience then recently where I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so having the tools that I have and the perspective that I have on my body healing, my impulse was to immediately go inside and work with my immune system, work with the mental, emotional dynamics that could create this problem in my body. And I've had some really great healing experiences through that process. Alyssa and I had talked about those a little bit.
Were you sort of self-hypnotizing in these cases, or were you going to see someone?
I did a lot of self-work. I did also get some help from friends. I have a friend who has a hypno-shamanism practice. I also got some intuitive Reiki from a friend. So I was definitely working with other people too. But even just the self-work that I was doing, I had some very intense, interesting experiences, including seeing the kind of activity of the way that I was visualizing my immune system. They began to do some things that were not what I was planning to imagine, right? They sort of took on a life of their own and then showed me what they were doing, which then ended up really seemingly closely corresponding to what they actually found in the tumor when they removed it. And so I really feel like a lot of that healing work happened before the surgery ever happened because of what I experienced in that place. But yeah, I also had some really deep and profound experiences with emotional patterns that led me to this place in the first place. Including there was a part of myself that had just decided really early in my life to kind of hold on to this pain and this feeling like I'm alone and I have to do everything by myself and that people don't care, basically because of something that happened to me in the hospital the day I was born. And so, yeah, and she showed me that experience. And basically when I first saw her, she was completely gray. Like she had no skin color. She was like basically on the verge of death. And I taught her how to release the pain, basically told her like, hey, I'm an adult now. I can handle it. We can enjoy our life. We can let go of this. We don't have to hold on to all of it anymore. And helped her to heal it and let go of it. So we went through it, basically just all of the pain starting from birth through, the first year, second year, third year, like going through this process. And it actually created a cathartic shaking. Like I actually couldn't stop my body from shaking as it was releasing this, like the same way animals release adrenaline after they've finished being like chased by a tiger or something. So it was very interesting. And then the older we got, like the more we got to the older years, then the shaking calmed down. But especially for those early years, it was very intense. And some of the experiences that I had have directly corresponded with things that have really opened up for me in my life since then. So the kind of emotional freedom, the results from the work that I did, I feel like was not only helpful in me now being past that situation with cancer. I no longer have that. I'm not working with that anymore.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, but it's also given me this very, it's unstuck a lot of like creativity and other, sort of stuff in my life that was really, in Chinese medicine, a tumor is stagnant chi. It's like stuck energy. And I can really see how that has opened up and loosened up there's some things that have been really difficult for me to do for a long time that just feel easy. And it's really wonderful. I'm actually weirdly happy that the whole thing happened. It's been actually a great experience.
It sounds very freeing.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Well, and it's inspiring too, because now, I know about the mind-body connection and all the ways which we could use hypnosis to work with our own mind and even work with physically healing our bodies. And now I have this lived experience of what it's like. So I'm actually really excited about doing more training around the medical side of hypnosis and taking my practice in that direction.
It's so interesting too. I mean, because you even told me that you put off the surgery I forget the reason, but it was like you could either get it done next week or in a month or two. And like, I think most people with a diagnosis of cancer would be like, get it out now, fast, as fast as possible. But you had like this calmness that you achieved through your work that allowed you.
And anytime you're going deep into these slow brainwave states, you're more connected to your intuition, right? Your intuition is the sort of like power of your unconscious mind that we don't always have that much processing capacity consciously. And so I'm pretty connected to my body and my intuition. And I just felt intuitively that it was going to be okay, that this experience was going to be positive in the end, regardless of what I had to go through along the way. And I think I only delayed the surgery, 2 or 3 weeks because I had clients and that sort of thing, and that I didn't want to cancel. So I didn't put it off for months, but I did use that extra time to intensively work on it on my own. And I do feel like that actually really facilitated the healing. I saw the immune cells sort of containing the worst of the cancer cells through my meditation process, through those self-hypnosis sessions during that period of time, so that by the time they removed the tumor, they got clean margins, which means there was no cancer cells around what they removed. And they sampled a lymph node and there was nothing in the lymph node. So there's basically no evidence of cancer outside of a very, very small area. So I have no
wonderful
physical proof, but I do really feel like the work that I did internally made a difference in that process.
The mind-body connection is very fascinating. And Britt and I have been told reluctantly, again and again, it's all about intention and stuff, right? Like setting intention and how important hypnosis is. Not hypnosis, but meditation. Yeah. Because like, the placebo effect is real. That is a very real phenomena. You tell someone this pill is going to make you better. If they believe it, guess what happens? They get better. And that's insane. I think even with me, since I do know that, like diagnosing an allergy, I'm like, well, is it because I'm crazy? Is it because I'm like of a stress in my life? Or is this actually happening? Do I actually feel this pain? Or is it because of something else going on? Like it's hard. It becomes a little hard to piece it apart and figure out what is the cause of whatever ailment it is.
Right. Well, and the idea of symptom as a communication from your body is really interesting, in that you can use that too. Like I have had a client who would get frequent migraines when she would work too hard without taking a break. And we didn't want to turn that warning off because she really did need to know that she needed to be taking breaks, right? Yeah. So instead of having her get a full-blown migraine, we asked her brain to rewire that pattern. So instead it would just make her pinky twitch. So it would be like her mind could tell her and she could listen and she could say, okay, I hear you. I'm going to take a break so that I don't have to get a headache, right?
Oh my gosh.
That's
awesome.
A huge shift from like a terrible migraine to just like a little pinky twitch. Right. Oh, that's brilliant.
That's cool. Yeah. See, I didn't even know this was like a possibility. I had no idea. That's really interesting.
So if you notice yourself having a symptom, whether it's an allergy or anything else, you can always just go inside and ask like, hey, what are you trying to tell me right now? Like, what is this about? And
It's
you might be
always chill
surprised
the
at how
fuck out.
much information.
Sorry. That's always the answer.
Yeah. Well, if you already know the answer, then you don't need me.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, but I'm sure other people at home listening, this is also news to them.
Well, even just like with phobias, like I'm surprised at how many people don't know how effective hypnosis is for that. Because there are people who go to traditional therapy for years and like don't see it budge because it's not a conscious process. It's an amygdala fear response. And until you can get to that moment where the amygdala was like, this is the scary danger thing, like it's really hard to unpack that.
That just makes me think of cockroaches. That's the only phobia that I truly have. Like,
Yeah.
I have a fear of heights that I have now that I don't think I ever had before. Like I freeze. Like I've never experienced anything before. Like I will be up on something and then I'm like, oh my God, a helicopter needs to come save me from this ladder because I can't move. I'm like stuck. I can't do it. But
you didn't have it when you were a kid?
like we used to climb on the roof of our house and stuff as a kid. Like I have no idea. I didn't fall. I mean, I don't know, but somewhere along the lines, I've developed this like freezing, like I freeze.
Yeah, so the roots of our fears are not always as obvious as you think. So it always starts earlier in life, but it's not always it's not always in the same form earlier in life. So like I worked with somebody for a flight phobia, and when we dug into his experience, it was more about feeling trapped in the cabin than it was actually about flying. Yeah. And so we traced that back several times, and the first one he went back to 7, 8 years old, somewhere like that. There was this sort of feeling hot and trapped in terms of this situation during a baseball game that had something to do with his brother. And those were the kind of key pieces. And we're like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with flying, but whatever. It was the same hot, trapped feeling. But that feeling went back even further. So we followed that back to a moment where, as like a 3-year-old, his brother had basically framed him for something and he didn't know how to speak up for himself at that age. So like he was feeling like really scared and trapped because like his brother, like his mom believed he did this bad thing. And it's, it was this whole situation where he felt really trapped and powerless. And so then at 7 or 8 years old, feeling like trapped in this situation at the baseball game, he had sort of brought that same emotion and sort of mapped that into this association, right, with feeling hot and trapped. And then at some point as a young adult, he was in an airplane where he was hot and feeling like he couldn't leave. And so then his amygdala was like, oh, this is the same pattern, and because at 3 years old, we don't have a lot of valuable information about how the world works and what things are actually dangerous and that sort of thing, that early stuff can get stuck really deep and feel really intense. And so when you map that 3-year-old experience onto this being on a plane feeling hot and trapped, then it became this phobia for him. So there's a logic to it, but you can't always access it consciously.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that is. That is interesting. Yeah, because I've never had a fall or anything. Like, I don't know. And it's only if I'm like, I'll do a ropes course or a like, what is the one where you zip line through treetops? Yeah. So if I have a false sense of security and safety, I know that something will save me, I'm fine. But as soon as you get me to try to like climb up a rock face or something like that, I'm like shaking, and then I call it the fear. And then I'm like, I can't take another step. It's so frustrating. And so it's the only thing in my life that I'm like that with. It's so bizarre, like a deer in the headlights.
We could figure it out if you want.
You
never
can
know.
dig deep. Yeah. But yeah.
It's good knowing good friends.
Yeah. All right. I just don't climb. It's a good excuse not to do a lot of the crazy shit
I also
Mitch
don't
wants
climb
me to do
I don't
too.
feel like that's something I need to fix.
Okay.
So not everything is a problem.
Yeah. Right. So, Lara, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast, Good Enough and Getting Better, and the sorts of things you're going to be covering on that and what made you start it?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about pursuing personal growth through this lens of self-worth. So I deal with clients with a lot of different, stress, fear, anxious feelings, and a common root, whether the problems are in your relationship or your career or, other areas of your life, a common denominator is that our ability to feel good about who we are and our worth really becomes this foundation for everything else in our life being healthy. And so I've just noticed that doing this work where we learn how to love ourselves, appreciate ourselves, accept ourselves as human beings, even as we're learning and growing and making mistakes and that sort of thing, really makes everything in life easier. So that is the focus of my podcast. I'm doing both teaching people different ways to think and approach problems, as well as doing some guided sessions, I'm going to do some interviews with people as well, just basically exploring this topic of living a better life, loving yourself more, in all the various ways that we can sort of easily and enjoyably and quickly access our own ability to change our experience.
Oh, I'm so excited to listen.
Thank you.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, it does.
So we ask a final question every SkeleTalk.
Oh, right.
If Alyssa and I were to do a seance to raise you from the dead, what 3 items would we need to bring to your seance?
Ooh, okay. So basically any form of art supplies. I'll keep that broad. I'm a art supply hoarder. If you looked around my house right now, it's pretty obvious. Let's see. Chocolate is always good.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Although
I'm
that's
loving
probably
this seance.
You're probably going to attract all the ghosts with chocolate because who doesn't like chocolate?
True.
Let's see. I don't know how you'd bring this to a seance, but I love audiobooks and specifically I'm into like these adventure stories with like a supernatural twist lately. So that would be fun.
Ooh.
Just play that while you're doing your seance.
All of this is very doable. We are both, between
Yeah.
Britt and I, we also have a lot of art supplies done. I got some chocolate in my freezer.
Excellent.
I always keep chocolate on top of my fridge, not in the freezer like a weirdo.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm just haunting your houses all the time, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and then the audiobooks. I know Britt's a big on audiobooks, right?
Right. Spend an eternity at Britt's house.
There you go. You're gonna
Heck
be
yeah,
following
come
her
on,
around.
Lara. I'm ready. And then I'll be like falling asleep and you're whispering in my ear, no, your eyelids are getting heavy.
Well, that's what you want at that time of the day. It sounds like I'm being very helpful.
Like,
You will be a very helpful ghost.
why am I clucking
I'm
like
down.
a chicken again? Oh, Lara.
Lara.
No, I
that's
have
no
yet
good.
to ever do that. But
Okay.
when I try out my pocket watch on you, we'll give that one
Yes,
a
please.
go.
Why is that pocket watch floating in midair? That's just Lara.
Nice.
I
Afterlife
love it.
goals. Love it.
Lara, tell our dear listeners where they can find your podcast, where they can find you and your hypnosis practice, all of the details.
Oh, yeah. So my hypnosis practice, I am at lenorehypnosis.com. And the podcast is gradually getting to all the places where podcasts go, iTunes, Spotify, etc. There's also a Facebook page for it, facebook.com/good enough and getting better. But yeah, if you just search Good Enough and Getting Better in your podcast app, eventually it will be there if it's not already.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great. And then your name is Lara Lenore. We said that at
Yes.
the beginning, right? I think.
I hope so.
I'm pretty sure.
We just introduced you at
Lara.
the very end of the
Yeah.
show.
I mean, I'm a
By the
hypnotist. I
way-
need a certain air of mystery.
There we
so-
go. Yes, you want to know more. Well, Lara, thank you so much for taking this time and entertaining all our ridiculous questions on hypnosis.
Of course. This was fun.
I'm sure everyone's learned a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just good seeing you and chatting with you again. It's been a bit.
Good to see you too. Well, I had one other thing I wanted to say because I'm just disappointed that we haven't had a chance to work an accent into your podcast yet, which Alyssa's accents are my favorite.
They are good.
Haunt y'all later.
Hunt you later.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Great.